Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Now I'm back with another Tower of God video, and this time we're starting from episode 161. So we're back at the Wooden Horse Station. The train has just pulled in, and we see that Borrow and the rest of the team are also looking up at what's going on. White is also getting ready to go and eat. He's really hungry. As I said, he's a soul devourer. It's one of his skills, and he's waiting to eat people's souls right now. So we see the station platform has a ton of people. They've all been gathered basically by Emily. We see him, Team Barrow. Barrow is there, and we see that multiple individuals are now getting ready. At this point, we see White is about to step out, and Daniel pulls him back in. We then see the FUG members are also ready. So we see the deal that Daniel has with White, where he basically cannot leave the train, because if he leaves the train he will never be complete, and provided that he stays on the train, there's a strong chance he can complete himself. It's at this point that Rachel shows up, and she explains that if they don't go out now, this will be suspicious. And we see that Rachel is interfering with Daniel's plan. So Rachel is planning to cut Daniel out of the whole situation and use White for her own purposes. Her and Yuraha have actually created this. We then see White looking over everybody, and we see Borrow's shock in his face. We see AKA Williams and Sachi Faker also expressing that he's awake. Then we see Poros talking to the administrator, saying that he thinks that White is trying to leave the train. We see that he's from the Ari family, one of the 10 great families, and we see that everybody is standing and waiting around. Then we see White begins to play his game, and he says in 30 minutes the train stairs to the train will be created. He will allow you to get on the train if you cut off other regulars' heads. Keep in mind, only those who cut off 4 regular heads will get on the train. So we see Daniel look at this and says it's such a crazy game, and then we see everybody on top, not on the top, actually on the bottom, start screaming at him. And then we see that he pulls out his sword and he slashes people instantly across the whole platform, and then he absorbs their souls. So this is the magic that he uses. It's something special. It's a spell so that he can devour souls, and he's devouring the souls of those that he will kill. Then we see that regulars start joining into his fight, and they start going crazy. We then see the FUG regulars who decide they're going to take these guys on. And that is where episode 161 ends. Then we see the flashback of what happened on the train long time ago. We then see what White did to the team with Rowena and the rest of them. We see how Daniel and Rowena bear the burden of the secret, and how White had targeted Poro for them to have to defend him. And we see that they describe White as the King of Hell. We then see that the FUG regulars start knocking out the regulars. And we see above the train that there's someone from the Kun family, and he's getting ready to shock it. Now, I suspect this is Mastenio or Hatzling, one of the two, and basically that's how things are going. Then we see that White turns everybody against the two Fug regulars, and we see that the fight gets crazy. And we see that Boro says that he's still as evil as he used to be, even though he's smaller in size, and that this really is the same guy that they went up against. We see that the Fug regulars just start wiping out people quite quickly. Then we see that the Fug regulars call him a blasphemer, and we see White start laughing. Then we see that White unleashes an assault. And at that moment we see that he is getting ready to kill these two Fug regulars. And we see that that's exactly what he did. Then we see AKA Williams and the rest of the team are gonna hold and wait until they can board the train. So 15 minutes later, it's 10 minutes before departure, and everybody is getting ready to run up onto the train. And then we see that they start running. At this point, White sees Boro, and we see that White really hates Boro. As we said, Boro is a weapons expert, and White's power is way crazy. Even if you block one of his hits, he's going to be really, really upset. And that's exactly what Boro did. Then we see whoever this Kun is, he shocks the train, and he ends up frying the train so that it stops, so that it can't move. And we see that the Kun who's here is now going to end up facing his father, whoever his father may be. This may be one of Kun's brothers or one of Kun's brothers' children. So that is the craziness to this here. And then we see that White looks over, and he then sees three regulars showing up out of nowhere. That's Kun, Balm, and Rock. And that is where episode 162 ends. Now, I know that I'm going a little bit slow, but let's try and get this on. So we see Kun, Balm, and Rock arrive, and we see that Balm first thing faces off and squares off with White. We then see everybody is wondering how did he get here so fast, and wondering who he is, and they didn't see him at Train City. And we see that Boro warns that's the person they warned him about. Then we see that the rest of the team holding Wagner and Iwa decide to get out of there, and at that same point we then get the fight erupting on the outside. We see that Arc Raptor, Prince, and Misang are coming close, and we see that Rachel is also standing over there at the same time. We then see everybody is about to get into their big fights on the outside of the train, and we see that White goes straight in at Balm, and it's Balm vs White for the first round, and they begin, and Bam evaded one of his attacks. And we see that Raak wants to also fight White as well. And at this point, somebody comes jumping along on lighthouses. We see it's Daniel who is going to fight the four of them. At this point, we see Sachi comes to take on Daniel. We see Yura and Rachel are on the same side to try and block them from entering the train. So we see Sachi decides he's going to take on Daniel, and now this is quite a dangerous one because Sachi is way more powerful than the rest of them at this point. He's most probably the most powerful regular there besides Bam and White. We then see the fight erupting, and we see Bam is able to stand up to White, and he takes one hit to the face from one of White's swords. Now that is where it ends. We then come back to seeing Sachi decides he's going to fight Daniel because he's a comrade who's turned to the wrong side, and you see that Bam took a hit from White and now he's taken out the thorn, so he's really getting serious. Then we see Kun is facing off against Yuraha. Then we see that Bam and White exchange a little bit of commentary, and then they start fighting again. And we see that White's sword reacts more like Shinsu, and it's for that reason that you can't really evade it. Then we see that Daniel talks down to all three of his former teammates, saying that they've also been hunting for ghosts on the train. Basically, he passes that comment because they've changed who they were in relation to the train because of what happened to them. Sachi, the ticket hunter, who stops people from basically entering the train. Borrow, the guide who helps people survive the train, aka Williams, the greedy king who just collects people. And then we see that Kun drops Yuraha down off her lighthouse. It's one of Kun's normal tricks. And we see Borrow warns the swordsman not to jump off the top and try and catch her. He'll die if he jumps from that height. We then see that Bam figured out the trick to White's sword. It's not that his sword is Shinsu. It's controlled by the space itself around the sword is controlled by Shinsu. So within a certain sphere, that sword can attack you from any place because they're using a Shinsu control skill. Then we see that White makes the biggest mistake ever and threatens Bam's friends. And then we see that Kun also lets his guard down and he ends up getting a surprise attack by Yuraha. And at this point we see that Pedro, the Death Eye, the ranker in charge of the train, acts, and he pulls everybody inside the train instantly with the teleport skill. And we see that Iwa and Wagnan have escaped. And we see that they run into one of White's clones, or actually one of White's siblings. Right now, we know that they are siblings, but at this point, we all thought they're just clones or pieces of White. And we see that he says, "Have you seen another me?" And basically is trying to unify with them. And we see that everybody is teleported in, and we see that Pedro basically welcomes everybody to the Hell Train, and he says that the whole thing that they're doing here is they're going to host a tournament for the Slayer nomination. So the whole idea behind this is the Elders of Fug don't want them to resurrect White, and they also don't want Balm to be let loose. So they decided they'll hold a tournament to rope Balm back into being a Slayer nominee. And we see that they're under Karaka's direct control. Now, you do remember that Karaka got a threat from Jin Sang Ha, so he's in big trouble when Jin Sang Ha finally gets back to all of this. He's going to shout him and say, "Why did he try doing such nonsense?" And now it's a bit too late also for Karaka in terms of the story. Balm most probably could kill him anytime he wanted to, even with his little spell that protects his heart. Remember, Balm breaks spells. So yeah, Karaka definitely does not want to mess around with Balm. We then see in the team Barrow along with Rak are teleported together, and we see that everybody is now wondering what in the world is going on the train. And we see that Mad Dog and Angel are now approaching Rak and his team. And we see that White says that they actually promised to resurrect him, and that was the deal that he made with Pedro. Then we see Kun wonders, since they said resurrect, is this truly White? Is he at his full power? Is there something that needs to be done for him to reach full power? Something must be up with this whole situation. Then we see that they also say that White is in a split situation. So the fact that he's split means that he isn't a complete one at the moment, and that makes him weaker. And we see that Fug took action to take hostages against Balm. We see that they captured Prince, Arc Raptor, Miseng, Quattro Blitz, and Balrad Cheng. So we see that Balm has no choice but to fight because of hostages again. Same situation that he's always in. And we see that this time he's going to be fighting White, and we don't know that White is a ranker as yet, a high ranker from the past of the tower, so things haven't yet been revealed. And we see that Wagnan and Iwa are talking to the clone of White. We can call him a clone, but it's actually the brother of White, and we'll find out his name soon enough when I remember it or if I see his name. Then we see that the train has started again, and it starts its movement as it's moving up the tower. And We see that the white clone decides that he's hungry, and Iwa hands him a bag of chips and he eats it. And they see that he's not like White, he's actually quite reasonable. We then see that Balm and the rest of his team are teleported to another area, and we see at this point that they were given a set amount of time. They're going to be given a month to clear the stage, and at the end of the stage they will take the 39th floor test in a place on the train, and when they take this test they'll be allowed to actually advance further. So if Balm and everybody meets up at that point, they will get a chance to take the test in the Slayer nominee examination. So they'll be fighting for the title of Slayer nominee. So they have to clear the stage test on each floor. They have to kill monsters that show up at night, and they have to kill the guardians placed in each room. And basically they have to clear a certain amount every day in order to keep going. And as I said, if Balm doesn't make it there on time, they'll just kill the hostages. So basically that's the whole reason. And we see that White has no option but to keep going. Then we see that Daniel's statue is reacting to the fact that he feels another one of the pieces of White. Then we see that Rachel, using Emily, says that she's found one of White's clones. It turns out that Emily's power is she can trace Shinsu wherever it is. So not only that she has the power of a guide, but she has other powers as well. And now White is in search of his clone. So things are getting a little bit more crazy. Then we see the fight between Rock and the Mad Dog and Angel and the rest of Team Barrow Barrow. And as they keep fighting, we see that eventually Iwa and Wagner enter the area where all this fighting is happening. And basically we see that the clones tell them they must stop doing this here, because if they keep making noise like this here, guardians or monsters will show up. And we see that White reaches the area and he sees that it's empty. So basically they start heading towards the clone as fast as possible, and we see that Harwin tells Balm that he's going to have a crazy long process to go through. He's going to have to fight all the guardians moving through the train, because this entire contest is basically going to be him against White. And she basically says if you really want to survive to everybody else, you're going to have to let Balm do all of the heavy lifting. Because if in the end this becomes a one-on-one fight between the two and he isn't strong enough, they're all going to die. So it's for their best interest. And we see that they say that Balm is in a bad state and it's not a good idea, and then eventually they finally give in that this is what's going to happen. And finally they agree they're going to leave all the battles up to him, and he now takes back his own name, Beol, basically, because he's a Slayer nominee once again. And we see that Harwin actually talks down Balm quite badly. She explains to him that he's now doing the stupid thing, like what he explained earlier when he was on the testing floor, chasing stupid things up the tower. And we then see that Balm decides to take it on, and he goes and he fights the Guardian. And we see that he is really bringing himself down in character. He is comparing himself to Rachel and that he's none the better. And then we see that he heads out to fight the Guardian. Now this Guardian is Yon, if I'm correct. And we see that the train is moving along as well, and then we get back to the stage 3 test. And we see that the Guardian starts throwing spears at him, and that Bomb can float and fly, and that he also uses reverse flow control against the Guardian. And we see that this is a close range combat Guardian. And then we see Bomb is fighting him, and that this Guardian is taking advantage of the fact that he's hurt, and he's aiming at the wounded side. At this point, we see Bomb is really struggling, and everybody's wondering if he will be able to handle it. And we see that Sachi realizes what's wrong with Bomb. Bomb doesn't have the will to kill towards his enemies at all, and that's what's actually bringing down his fighting ability. That's the one thing that is lacking. And we see that Pedro explains that they actually need this process to resurrect White because of the elders opposing it. Then we see that Wagner and Iwa accidentally call out to Rak, and they now expose the fact that they're friends with each other. And at this point, we see that the Mad Dog contacts the clone or the split of White, and he says, "Are you another one of White?" We see that Angel and the Mad Dog explain the henchmen of White, and that they're here to hurt the others. And we see that I think this isn't Daniel. I'm not sure on his name. We see that this clone of White decides to say that he's going to side with Wagner and Iwa because they fed him and that they're nice people. We then see White running towards them, and we see that the clone is going to attack Angel and the Mad Dog, and they realize this is really bad because they don't stand a chance. And there's it. White just screamed his name in the section. It's Vincent. I actually forgot his name completely. So yeah, actually Vincent is the active personality right now of White. We see that White decides to tell Vincent to become one with him, and then we see that Yacome is fighting Bomb quite heavily, and they see that Bomb lacks evil inside of him. That's the one thing that's making him really too lenient on his enemies. And we see that they're worried that if Bomb doesn't get that fighting instinct, they're all going to be dead. And we see that he passes the test solo by himself, and that is where 167 ends. So we get on to episode 168 with an explanation of the Ari family. And we see that the whole story of the 5 siblings is explained from White's perspective. And we see that they became one with the demon. That's how they managed to pull off their fusion. And we see that that Vincent and Joaquin are talking to each other, the 2 factors of White. I'm just going to call them factors of White. And basically we see that Vincent explains that if they absorbed, one of them has to vanish. And basically Vincent is asking who's going to vanish, because he doesn't want to vanish again. And we see that A.K. Williams and Borrow explain that the train changes as it changes floors. So each time he changes the floor, things change all over the place. So then we see that Sachi decides to talk to Bam. Now, what's unique about this is it's a wave controller talking to a wave controller, so they can relate well to how they fight. And we see that Satya explains what Ruina did and why they believe Daniel is here on the train, what he's up to and what he's after. And we see that Satya explains that they've also been after trying to pick up all the pieces of Ruina's soul and revive her. We then see that they arrive at a warp device, and basically they say that it's time consuming to warp, and whenever you use the warp you end up fighting guardians, so it leads you to difficult paths. And then we see that White and Vincent have their crazy talk, at which point we see Wagner pull out the white heavenly mirror, and he then no, that's not Wagner. Oh no, Wagner did pull out the white heavenly mirror, and then we see White and Vincent have a quick a quick battle with each other, and we see the team Barrow is wondering which side they should team up with, and then Mad Dog kills one of their members. And we see that Barrow and the Pan School decide that they're going to fight the others at that point either day. Yeah, so that's how it goes. We then see that White and Vincent are having this big fight, and we see that Wagner asks Vincent something, and then a few seconds later he stabs Vincent through the heart and captures him in the sword. At which point Iwa fires a big blast at White and they all start running. And then we see that Bam and the rest of his team reach the God of Guardians, and that is where 168 ends. So we're gonna get into episode 169. We then see that the God of Guardians is considered the strongest of all the Guardians on the train, and that that he can kill them all. And basically, no regular has been able to beat him. So every time anybody comes near him or fights him for his challenge, he just ends up killing the whole team. And then we see that Bam decides he will challenge the God of Guardians. And we see that Bam decides to fight him because if he doesn't, he feels like he'll regret it later, and he would have regretted it if he didn't. And then we see that they decide to let Bam go for it, and he goes up to the God of Guardians. And then you see the God of Guardians jump straight down towards him, and he says that he's an irregular, basically. Opened the gate and came in by himself, and he instantly attacks at Bam once, and he basically tells him that so he basically tells him that he's going to train him. He's going to take him through the revolution, and he takes him into the rice pot. And at this point, he starts his training to become a proper irregular. And we see that the God of Guardians explains that a master of the workshop created this place for the 10 great families so that they could undergo revolution to learn their powers. And he basically explains that this is where Bam will discover himself. We then see that it flashes back to Iwa, Wagner and the rest of them, and they basically talking about what they're going to do. And we see that Wagner gets shocked when Vincent speaks to him from inside the knife, because he hasn't ever seen that before. And we see that Vincent says that he wants to help Viol and take away the power from White. And we see that Daniel and Rachel are butting heads, and that White is counting on Rachel to find other copies, and they find another copy of White called Anna. So yeah, so another one of the siblings basically. And then we see that in the present, quite a long time has passed, and everybody's still waiting for Bam to come out of the rice pot. And we see that Sachi says that he had no intention to hurt the boy, and they're basically waiting to see how this gamble pays off. And at this point, we get a very special guest showing themselves on the train. Yuri Jahad joins the whole adventure. So yes, we know in the next section we're gonna get Yuri and Pedro's fight, and that craziness is going to erupt. So things are about to get crazy. And at this point, things are already crazy, but they're going to get even more crazy. It's the final part. We then see that Bam starts undergoing his training with the God of Guardians, and he gets shrunk into his inside. Basically, he starts shrinking away internally into himself to find his true self. And we see that he's been inside the rice pot for 10 days, and that all the others are still waiting on the outside. And we see that Kun explains that if something were to happen to Bam, he'd most probably do exactly what Daniel did, make a deal with the devil to get his friend back. And then we see Bam slowly descending into himself, and he comes to a place where there's a monster inside him. And we see that Bam says that he's been talking to this power, and that the power has been inside him. It's the power to conquer everything. And you see that the monster explains if Bam gives in to this power, he can overcome everything else. He can rule everybody. And we see that the Guardian is saying that he is being tempted by an enormous power, and then Bam has to continue fighting against the power a countless number of times so that it doesn't become like Jahad. So we know that something was definitely wrong with Jahad by the end of what happened in the tower. We then see that Vincent is helping Wagner and the rest pass their tests so that they can advance. And we see that Vincent explains that there are 5 pieces to White altogether. Then we see that Daniel shows up by Vincent, and he decides to help lead them to another copy of White, or another split of White, so that they can stop White himself, because he might be able to achieve the same goal from another one of White's copies to get Rowena revived. And we see Bam's fight with his internal power, and basically he says that that the power that is being offered is not his own. He doesn't need such power. And we see that Bam says the power that this power is talking about isn't the power that is his. Um, he doesn't want false power, he wants power that's his own. And he basically keeps telling it to show him his true power. Then we see that Pedro is talking to Karaka, and he explains that soon the Slayer nominee exam will begin. And you see that they're actually holding the last copy of White. And at this moment, we see that Yuri shows up. And we see that she says that she is on the train to find a regular called the 25th Bam. And that is where episode 170 ends, and that is where this whole section ends. Now, here are the important things for you to know. This little process that Bam is going on actually unlocks an irregular's power. So he's getting in contact with the irregular power within him, and he's going to become an even greater beast down the line. So Bam is just upping his ante, and he's going to become a bigger threat to enemies down the line. He's going to be able to do some crazy things, and that is one of the things that you have to understand about this particular section in the tower. It's not so much about how do I put it? It's not so much about the fact that Bam is getting training from somebody who understands he's an irregular and understands irregular power. It's more along the fact that he's unlocking power. So yeah, that's the whole thing. So yeah, that's just the whole thing. Sorry about that. I know I just went silent for a few seconds. So yeah, that is the basics of what is going on at this point in Tower of God. And yeah, things are getting a little bit out of hand for the basic part of this. But you need to understand that more crazy things are about to happen down the line on this same section of the tower. We're going to get the whole fight between White and Bam, and Bam is going to be super powered up with that little ability that he's learned. Channeling his true power is going to allow him to access more power and the Thorn's potential to open him up becomes more stable. So Bam can use more of the Thorn's power for a longer period of time without it being too dangerous for himself. And eventually using this power will allow him to actually ignite the Thorn. So he finally can use its transcendence skills, which we know is Stardust Breaker, and then when he gets second Thorn piece, we know that that power is some type of teleport. So both Thorns can be ignited and unlock his potential at the same time. It makes him even more crazy and ridiculous in terms of power. So that's what's coming up for Bam soon. So yeah, that's where it is, and I will catch you all in the next one. There's not much to explain right now. There's a lot to explain in the last 10 episodes. I think the next 10 are just going to be the intermediary where the Dollar Show happens, and then the last 10 is going to be where Yuri actually completes this whole part and where they lead up to the Neyman station. So catch you all in the next one and have a good day.